A very clear picture of a creepy guy and a really clear question. Why did so many people who had so much to lose keep hanging out with him? We sat down with a couple of experts and said, you look at this, law enforcement people, tell us what you think.
I think women, as I said the last time, have an intuitive sense. What is intuitive? They have intuition, they have feelings, and they're able to deal in the realm of things that men, especially men like myself, find unexplainable.
So Melissa Marola, as a former profiler, Christine Dunn as a former federal prosecutor, when you hear that, what do you see?
So I see somebody who clearly knows how to take advantage of a situation, how to size somebody up and determine, is there a way that I can spot vulnerabilities and that I can use those vulnerabilities and exploit them in some capacity?
I don't think he viewed any of his victims as actual people. They were, things to be used by him.
To what degree do you think this lavish lifestyle that he exposed people to was also just part of the whole equation?
We know that most of his victims were vulnerable individuals. And so they see something like this and they think, this is opportunity for me to get ahead, to have a stable income, to have, a place that I can go. And so it's part of the grooming process. It really is.
9 cameras inside one man's home, and the footage from all of them has vanished. Not stolen, not lost, just gone. The Justice Department says they've released everything they have. But survivors who walk those halls, who can count every camera on every wall, know exactly what should be on those tapes. And it isn't there. That question, where is the footage, is just one thread in a web so dark, so deliberately constructed, that even former FBI profilers and federal prosecutors struggle to find the edges of it. This is the story of how Jeffrey Epstein didn't just abuse his victims. He engineered their silence, he weaponized their vulnerability, and he built a system so airtight that it held for decades, protected by wealth, by power, and by names that the world still hasn't fully reckoned with. And we're just getting started. To understand how this worked, you have to understand who Epstein appeared to be. On the surface, he was a financier, a man of connections, someone who could get you a board seat worth millions, or one phone call that would change your career. He presented himself as a gateway to influence, to elite circles, to a world most people only read about. Former profiler Melissa Marola put it plainly. She said he knew exactly how to size someone up, how to spot a vulnerability, and how to exploit it. He wasn't just charming, he was calculating. And his targets were almost always the same: young, vulnerable, and desperate for a lifeline. That's where the playbook begins. Danielle Bensky was 17 years old when she first walked through the door of Epstein's Manhattan townhouse. She thought she was there as a masseuse. That's what she'd been told. He shook her hand. He was polite, professional even. She had no reason to be afraid. Not yet.
Well, I think all of these famous individuals gave him legitimacy. You come into this situation and you see, well, Jeffrey Epstein is good friends with this person that I admire and respect, so there must be some legitimacy to him.
One of the things he talked about was his contact with other people and opportunities he could make for others.
He said there's this company called he said he mentioned it to you. He thinks they'll pay you a couple of $1 million to be on the board. You're going to make a lot of money. You're definitely going to make a lot of money.
By being connected to Jeffrey Epstein, it opens up a world of contacts and profitable opportunities. That is hard to say no to, and maybe that's why people were willing to overlook some of these red flags.
He offered board seats, he promised introductions, he dangled opportunities in front of people who had everything to gain and told themselves they had nothing to lose by staying close. And that calculated legitimacy is why it went on for so long.
He fits what we see in a lot of our domestic violence cases when we see somebody who has the ability to physically, emotionally, mentally, psychologically continue to dominate. And that's what I think I see with him versus true intelligence.
There's this one clip when he's trying to rehabilitate his image, basically. And he's being asked by Steve Bannon for a potential documentary they're going to make about his impression of himself.
And it never struck you about how to end up in a situation like this?
No, that would be probably means I would be too self-aware. You're suggesting I was sort of somewhat depressed, and how could this happen to me?
I'm not saying depressed. I'm saying a moment of awareness of how could I get myself into this situation.
No, I would just say how strange that this happens. it's strange.
He's unable to accept blame, unable to feel regret, feel remorse. If he were still alive, I could see him continuing to proclaim his innocence. He just does not value the gravity of what he has done and will not and did not truly take responsibility.
Now here's where it gets darker. When Danielle was subpoenaed by the FBI in 2008, she was terrified. She called her mother, and her mother said something that should stop you cold. She told her daughter that speaking out would derail her whole life. That wasn't just maternal fear, that was a line Epstein had already planted. He had told Danielle directly, "You'll be brought up on prostitution charges. You will be the one who gets destroyed." He built a psychological prison around his victims before they ever tried to leave. She spoke to the FBI, but she couldn't tell them everything. Not in 2008, not again in 2019. The intimidation ran so deep that she described her own abuse in the third person, dissociating from the experience just to survive the retelling. "That was me," she said, when confronted with her own file. "That was me." He even went further. When Danielle's mother was diagnosed with a brain tumor, Epstein offered help. One phone call to a top hospital. All she had to do was procure others for him. She refused. Her mother had the surgery anyway, without his help, and Danielle stopped answering his calls.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes. You're incredibly smart. You remember, the devil is somebody
the devil
knows
smart?
The devil's brilliant. You read Milton's Paradise Lost.
No, the devil scares me.
I mean, he's acting like he's the victim here.
Correct, which is not surprising.
He was charming, and he was able to give people what they wanted, and people wanted to believe it so that they could stick around in this Shangri-La that he created.
And that is what you have going on and why it went on for so long.
When asked how he ended up in this situation, he said, "It's just strange. Just strange." That's the man the elite protected. That's the man the system shielded for decades. And there are still people walking free who knew exactly what they were overlooking. So here's the question that nobody in power seems willing to answer. If the footage is gone, the names are redacted, and the files keep changing, who exactly is still being protected? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you want the stories they don't want told, subscribe to Viral Spills. We're not done.
You okay?
Yeah. It's just not easy to see. It's like, it's just, it holds a lot. And just like who I was before I stepped into these doors and who I was after. It's so long ago that I think like now, after becoming a parent especially, you start to realize that 17 is so little, you know. I remember standing right there. There was the JE on the side. Would have been here. Yeah.
What did you think you were coming here for? What were you
To be a
told?
masseuse. Yeah. He was like, "Nice to meet you," you know, shook our hand, and then just like got down on the massage chair on the table and was like, "You start up here, you start down on your legs."
So it wasn't until the second time when you came by yourself?
He said, "Ballerinas are crazy and they love to get naked," right? And, you know, if you want to be a ballerina, like, is that like, are you like that, right? Do you like to get naked too? Like, you should totally try it. And I got naked and massaged him.
So it was a gradual
Yes, very
process.
gradual. And that's part of the grooming process and grooming tactic.
The second visit was different. He tested boundaries, made comments about ballet dancers, normalized nudity with throwaway lines designed to sound casual. She was a teenager. She didn't have the language for what was happening to her. Nobody had prepared her for this. That gradual erosion, that slow, deliberate dismantling of a young person's instincts, is textbook grooming, and Epstein had perfected it. But here's what makes this case unlike almost anything law enforcement had seen before. He didn't just groom his victims, he groomed the world around them. Think about it. He surrounded himself with celebrities, politicians, academics, and billionaires. Not because he admired them, because proximity to power is the most convincing costume a predator can wear. You walk into a room and see Jeffrey Epstein laughing with someone you've respected your entire life, and suddenly the red flags become background noise.
Look at how many cameras there are. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So like that was what I expected to see when we were originally looking through the files. I was expecting to see a lot of footage of girls at least in and out. Nobody has that footage.
Yeah.
So where is that footage?
Yeah.
The DOJ confirmed they've released everything in their possession. They did not comment on why Danielle's name still appeared in the files during filming, only for it to quietly disappear afterward, with no explanation. There are still redactions nobody has explained, still frames too blacked out to read, still metadata missing from videos that should tell us who was in the room and who was holding the camera. And there are still names, connected names, powerful names, names that opened doors and provided cover for a man that a former federal prosecutor described not as a criminal genius, but as a domestic abuser with an unlimited budget and a global network. He called himself brilliant. He referenced Paradise Lost when asked if he was the devil. He showed no remorse, no self-awareness, no accountability.
My mom was diagnosed with a brain tumor called an acoustic neuroma. We looked at my mom's scans, and he said that all it would take was one phone call to Mount Sinai to get her the top of the line care. He asked what I would do for it. He told me that he wanted me to procure others, which I never did, though I was so intimidated by him. At our sessions after, he repeatedly physically abused me and made me do things to him. Finally, my mom had her surgery, no help from Jeffrey. And so I stopped answering the calls. Before Jeffrey, I was a vivacious dancer with a love for ballet and the arts. After Jeffrey, I quit dancing because I couldn't look at myself. I couldn't look at my body in a leotard. It felt like my body was no longer my own. When I went to acting school, that was the time when I started to actually feel like I could come to terms with who I used to be. I found dance for myself again, and like the movement kind of recalibrated me to come back to myself.
Before Epstein, she was a dancer, passionate, vivacious, alive. After him, she couldn't look at herself in a leotard. She said her body no longer felt like her own. That is the full cost of what he did. Not just the abuse, the theft of identity, the erasure of a person from the inside out. Now the files have been released. Thousands of pages, hours of footage, and for survivors like Danielle, the release has raised more questions than it has answered. Because those 9 cameras, the footage the DOJ says it has released in full, Danielle stood outside that townhouse and counted them herself. She expected to see girls in and out, evidence, proof of what she lived through. Nobody has that footage.